Originality is a lie. Every creative thought you have ever had, every business idea, every joke, every artistic breakthrough, it's actually just undetected plagiarism. If you are sitting there right now staring at a blank screen trying to be original, you are, and I mean this, you're actively wasting your time. You shouldn't be trying to create. You should be trying to steal.
Okay, wow. That is an aggressive way to start. You're telling me, and everyone listening, that the goal here is to be a thief. Because where I come from, that sounds unethical, illegal, and frankly, shortcut for lazy people.
I knew that would trigger the moral alarm bells. But seriously, put down the pitchfork for a second. I'm not talking about robbing banks or, copyright infringement. I'm talking about a fundamental shift in how we view the mechanics of creativity. We are diving into Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon today. And the core premise is that the pressure to be a genius, to conjure something brilliant out of thin air, is actually what paralyzes us. The solution: stop trying to make something out of nothing. You have to start embracing influence.
It's a provocative idea, I'll give you that. It definitely flies in the face of what we're all taught in school. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Don't copy. We're conditioned to view influence as cheating.
Exactly. And that school mentality is exactly what kills the artist in us. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today on Nonfiction Insights, to break down the reality of how work actually gets made so you don't have to fake it. Or maybe so you learn how to fake it the right way.
Okay, let's unpack this faking it idea.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about the burden of genius, I think everyone listening can relate to that. The tyranny of the blank page, it's terrifying. But if we aren't supposed to be creating something new, what are we actually doing? Just recycling.
We're remixing. Kleon calls the standard view the creative myth. We have this romanticized idea that great artists or entrepreneurs just have this lightning bolt moment where they pull a masterpiece out of the ether. Like it's magic. But Kleon is very clear on this. He says nothing comes from nowhere. He even quotes the French writer André Gide, who said something like, everything that needs to be said has already been said. But since no one was listening, everything must be said again.
I have to be honest, that sounds incredibly depressing at first glance. If everything has been done, why bother making anything at all? It makes creative work feel, futile. Like we're just shouting into an echo chamber.
See, that's the knee-jerk reaction. But Kleon argues it's actually the opposite. It's liberating. It takes all that weight off your shoulders. If you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you are free to just spin it. You're free to mash up what you love. Think about it like this. The genealogy of ideas.
Genealogy.
Yeah.
Like a family tree.
Exactly like a family tree. Think about your actual DNA. You have a mom and a dad. You are a remix of their genetics. You're unique, absolutely, but you are composed entirely of pre-existing material. You didn't invent your own DNA structure.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Kleon says ideas work the same way. You are a remix of the movies you watch, the books you read, the music you listen to, even the conversations you overhear. You are the sum of your influences.
So we're essentially curating our own intellectual lineage. We get to choose our ancestors.
Precisely. There's a great line from Goethe he uses. We are shaped and fashioned by what we love. So if you accept that, your job isn't to be a wizard who conjures things from the void. It's to be a collector.
A collector. Okay, I like that framing much better than thief. But how does that actually work in practice? Because there's a difference between a curator and, a hoarder. How do we get from just collecting other people's stuff to creating something that feels new?
This brings us to the math of creativity. Kleon has this brilliant little mental model. It's simply 1 + 1 = 3.
I think we might need to check your calculator on that one.
No, bear with me. Close your eyes for a second. And you too, listeners, unless you're driving. Imagine drawing 2 parallel lines on a piece of paper. Just 2 black lines. How many lines are there?
2, obviously.
So technically, yes. But look closer. There is the first line, the second line, and then there is the negative space running between them, that distinct channel of white space. That's the third line. When you combine 2 existing ideas, let's say, 18th century poetry and heavy metal music, the friction between those 2 existing things creates a third, totally new thing. That negative space is where your originality lives.
That's a fascinating visualization. So it implies that the creativity isn't in the raw materials themselves, but in the juxtaposition. It's the collision.
Exactly. It's all about the mashup. The innovation happens in the mix, but to do that, you need raw materials. You can't mash up nothing. You have to build what Kleon calls a swipe file.
A swipe file? That sounds like something out of Mad Men.
It is. Very Mad Men.
Yeah.
You keep a folder, digital or physical, whatever works, of everything that speaks to your soul. A cool font, a snippet of conversation you overheard, a color palette from a movie poster. a paragraph from a book that just floored you, you don't hoard it indiscriminately, you curate. You save what creates an emotional reaction in you.
So you're building a repository of sparks, basically.
Yes, because inevitably you will hit a creative block. And when you do, you don't stare at the ceiling, you open the swipe file. You look at your collection and say, okay, how does this old postcard relate to this article on artificial intelligence? Boom, you have friction. You have a new idea.
Okay, I'm with you on the inspiration part. It makes total sense to feed the brain. But I still see a massive pothole here, and I think we need to address it before our listeners get served a lawsuit. There's a very fine, very legal line between being influenced by something and being a rip-off artist. If I take a Harry Potter book, change the names to Larry Potter, and publish it, that's not a mashup. That's just plagiarism.
Right. And you will get sued, and you will absolutely lose. Kleon validates this confusion completely. He actually draws a matrix to explain it. The difference between good theft and bad theft.
Okay, walk me through this matrix. What separates the artist from the plagiarist? Because intent has to matter here.
It comes down to intent and execution. Let's look at bad theft first. Bad theft is when you steal from one person. You skim the surface without understanding the depth. You plagiarize, you degrade the work, it's lazy.
Right, that's the Larry Potter example.
Yeah.
You're just looking for a shortcut.
Exactly. Now compare that to good theft. Good theft is stealing from many people. This is the crucial difference. There's a quote attributed to Wilson Misner in the book that just nails this. If you steal from one author, it's plagiarism. If you steal from many, it's research.
That is surprisingly accurate. It reminds me of academic writing. You can't write a paper based on one source, but if you synthesize 20 sources, you created a new perspective.
It really is that simple. Good theft involves studying the thinking behind the work, not just the surface style. You credit your sources, and most importantly, you transform it. You don't just copy it, you remix it into something that sounds like you.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, good theft is basically synthesis. It's taking diverse inputs, processing them through your own unique perspective, and then outputting something transformed.
Spot on. And that transformation process, it usually happens through failure. This is one of my favorite parts of the book because it totally flips the idea of failure on its head. It's the imitation versus emulation model.
Go on. How does failure lead to style?
So we start by imitating. This is natural. We try to be our heroes. We want to write exactly like Stephen King or paint exactly like Picasso. But, and here's the twist, we fail. We can't do it. We are physically and mentally incapable of making a perfect copy.
Because we're different people. We have different lived experiences, different limitations, different wiring.
Exactly. And that gap, that failure to be a perfect photocopier, that is where our originality shows up. It's the flaws in our imitation that actually define us.
Do you have an example? Because that sounds a bit abstract.
Oh, history's full of them. Let's talk about the Beatles.
The biggest band in history.
Yeah.
I mean, the gold standard of originality.
Right. But they didn't start that way. They started as this scruffy cover band playing strip clubs in Hamburg for hours and hours. Paul McCartney explicitly admitted, I emulated Buddy Holly, Little Richard, Elvis. They were trying desperately to sound like Black American R&B artists.
But they were white kids from Liverpool. They didn't have the voice, the background, or the cultural context.
Exactly. And so they didn't sound like Black American R&B artists. They sounded like the Beatles. Their failure to perfectly copy Little Richard became the Beatles sound. They created something new specifically because they couldn't perfectly replicate their heroes.
That's wild. So if they did better mimics, they might have just been another forgotten cover band.
Potentially, yes. Or take Kobe Bryant.
The basketball legend.
Kobe was obsessive. He admitted, there isn't a move that's a new move. He watched endless VHS tapes of Michael Jordan. He stole every single move Jordan had.
So he was just a copycat.
He tried to be. But here's the thing. Kobe didn't have Michael Jordan's hands. Jordan had these massive hands. Kobe didn't have Jordan's exact body structure. He physically could not execute the moves exactly the same way. He had to adapt them to fit his body. That adaptation, forced by his physical limitations, made the moves Kobe's.
That is fascinating. It reframes limitation as a kind of superpower. Our inability to be perfect mimics is actually our greatest strength.
You know, Francis Ford Coppola said, we want you to take from us. You will take what we give you and you will put it in your own voice, and that's how you will find your voice.
Okay, I'm sold on the philosophy. It really does make sense. But let's get practical. We live in a world of infinite distraction. I can sit down to remix ideas and end up scrolling Twitter for 3 hours. How do we actually do this work without getting stuck?
This is where Kleon gets super tactical. He has a strategy he calls the 2 desks.
2 desks. I live in a city apartment. I barely have room for one.
I know, but stick with the concept because you can adapt it. It's about separating the two modes of work, generating and editing. Kleon suggests having an analog desk and a digital desk.
Okay, break that down. Why separate them?
The analog desk has zero electronics. No laptop, no phone, just markers, paper, index cards, scissors. It's messy. It's chaotic. This is where you generate ideas. Kleon says paper doesn't crash. You can scratch things out, rip them up, physically move ideas around. It connects your hands to your brain.
And the digital desk.
That's where the computer lives.
Yeah.
And that is for editing, refining, and publishing. The problem is when we try to generate ideas on a computer, the delete key is it's too close. The perfectionist kicks in. We start editing sentences before we've even finished the thought.
That is so profound. I do that all the time. I'll write a sentence, look at it, decide it's stupid, delete it, write it again. And an hour later, I have a blank page. The computer just brings out the internal critic.
Exactly. The computer is a finishing tool, not a thinking tool. You need to separate the creator, who is messy and playful, from the editor, who is critical and precise. Even if you don't have space for 2 physical desks, you have to separate the mindsets. Maybe the kitchen table is for writing by hand, and the desk is for typing.
It connects back to what we said earlier about the burden of genius. The computer screen feels so high stakes. A scrap of paper just feels temporary, low risk.
Low stakes is the name of the game. Which leads to another huge point in the book that I think you'll appreciate, especially in the age of influencers, the gift of obscurity.
Obscurity. That sounds like a failure to most people today. Everyone wants to be famous. They want the likes, the views, the viral moment.
And that's the trap. Imagine you post something today and it goes absolutely viral, millions of eyes on you. The next time you post, what are you feeling?
Oh, terror. Absolute pressure. I have to maintain that standard. I have a brand now. I can't post garbage anymore.
Exactly. Kleon says, you want attention only after you're doing really good work. When you are unknown, there is no pressure, no audience to manage, no brand to uphold. You can fail, you can make weird stuff, you can experiment with styles that don't work, and nobody cares. That is a gift.
That's a really healthy way to look at it.
Yeah.
We're in such a rush to build a platform that we forget that the platform limits what we can say. Obscurity is the laboratory.
Yes. Use that time, mess around, because once that spotlight is on, you can't really turn it off. You need to build your skills in the dark so you're ready for the light.
So we have steal from many, use your hands, and enjoy being unknown. But there's one more piece I saw in the notes about subtraction, which feels kind of counterintuitive if we're supposed to be collecting everything.
Right, creativity as subtraction. Look, we live in an age of information overload. We have access to every song, every book, every image ever made. It's paralyzing.
Decision paralysis. If I can do anything, I usually end up doing nothing.
Precisely. Kleon argues that you are defined by what you choose to leave out. Constraints breed creativity. If you tell yourself, I'm going to paint a picture, that's terrifying. But if you say, I'm going to paint a picture using only the color blue and a sponge, suddenly you have a path. You have to get creative to solve the problem of the constraint.
It reminds me of that story about Dr. Seuss. He wrote Green Eggs and Ham on a bet that he couldn't write a book using only 50 distinct words. The constraint forced the innovation.
That is the perfect example. He couldn't use fancy adjectives, so he had to focus on rhythm and repetition. The limitation created the masterpiece.
So if we were to synthesize all of this, let's say we're talking to a teenager who wants to be a YouTuber or an artist, how would we wrap this up? What's the roadmap?
We call this the teenager test, or honestly, the anyone starting anything test. Here is the steal like an artist manifesto in 4 steps.
Right.
1, don't worry about being original. Just try not to be boring. 2, find the heroes you love and copy them, literally. Retype their words, learn their chords, trace their drawings. 3, you will fail to copy them perfectly. Don't panic. That failure is your style. That's you. And 4, step away from the screen. Make things with your hands, make a mess, and then finish them on the computer.
It sounds suspiciously like fake it till you make it.
Close, but Kleon actually corrects that phrase. It's not fake it till you make it, it's fake it till you become it. You aren't tricking people, you are practicing until the mask becomes your face.
That's a powerful distinction. It moves it from deception to transformation. It's not about lying, it's about growing into the role.
And that brings us to the final check. If you're ever worried about whether you're crossing the line from good theft to bad theft, Kleon has one final test. He calls it the elevator test.
The elevator test.
Imagine you are stuck in an elevator with the person you stole from. You've used their ideas, remixed their work. If they saw what you did, Would they shake your hand and say, hey, nice job remixing my work, that's cool? Or would they punch you in the face?
That is a very visceral metric.
It's the only ethical metric that really matters. If you're honoring the source, transforming it, and adding value, they should want to shake your hand. If you're just ripping them off, well, prepare for a punch.
Well, I certainly don't want to get punched, but I do feel a lot better about checking out my swipe file after this conversation. It feels like permission to be a learner again.
If you want to build your own genealogy of ideas, start by subscribing to this channel. We're collecting the best ideas so you can steal them.
And remix them.
Exactly. This is Nonfiction Insights. Go make something.